I'm going to log in as an admin user to be able to show you everything. There is a very granular access control in the system, which will allow users to see only a subset of features or subset of data they are allowed to see. This is something you can configure as an administrator. Log in as an admin to be able to show you everything. So the very first time you log in, you see a list of domains that you monitor, and you understand the concept of a domain in Mule. So if you have multiple domains, you would be able to see them. If you have RTF, you would be able to see it here. If you have CloudHub, you will be able to see it here along with your on-prem installation. So this is, for example, just an Anypoint Studio running on a desktop. In this environment, you can also connect it to nJAMS and see exactly what's running on that laptop as a demo. Now, once you click on it, you have the features. By default, we search for data for the past 15 minutes, and you get a list of all executions of the past 15 minutes. You can click on any item here on any flow, and this will give you a search. It will actually execute a search in our data store and retrieve all the executions of the past 15 minutes. You can select any time frame of your choice for the winner search. There is also a search bar where you can search for any information independently of the flows it runs on. You can search for any business data, any technical data. This is a free text search. Anything we collect, you should be able to search for. nJAMS captures actually a snapshot of what has been executed in the platform. And you see, we have the process diagram. We have exactly the configuration of every single activity as it is done in your environment. This is a transform activity, for example, transform message, and you would be able to see the configuration as well as any mapping done to it. There are some other features available to see more data. By default, if you enable a replay, by right-click on this, and the replay is enabled, I will be able to see the payload that has been used to trigger a flow. So this flow, for example, I could see exactly the payload that has been used in the beginning of my flow, of my API call, and see the data that has been used to do that. I can also enable tracing, go to any activity of my choice, and click on this icon. This will enable tracing for 15 minutes, and then tracing will be switched off automatically. I can also configure the tracing to be enabled and disabled during any time frame of my choice. For example, if you have issues that happen only in the evening or over the weekend, and you don't want to enable tracing all the time because you don't want to collect so much data, you can just enable the tracing, let's say from 1 to 2 o'clock, and collect maybe just 10 messages and then switch off the tracing automatically. Deep trace is another feature that you can use to follow a message across different flows and across different even engines. You could follow a message from on-prem to CloudHub or vice versa. And then deep trace will enable tracing for all subsequent activities in the flow, that you see exactly how the data has been mapped, translated, routed, and so on. So with regards to the scope of monitoring in nJAMS, we have nJAMS monitoring the flow as well as the data executed along the flow. And you have the possibility to see the data at every single activity. So you see what happens before the activity has executed. So this is what you see in the inputs if you enable tracing, and you see what happened with the data after the activity has executed. If in case of any errors are captured automatically by nJAMS. If they are not captured by the user, nJAMS will capture them automatically, and in the event you will see a list of errors, and you will see the stack trace, and you get enough information to understand exactly what the root cause of the issue was. In nJAMS, we can also configure certain attributes. This icon here, if I click on it, it gives me the opportunity to create custom attributes or to configure existing predefined properties. So add in a custom attribute like order ID, and I can use the value using GMS path or a regular expression. If I have unstructured data, I can use XPath with XML data, or I can even hard code a value for the order ID. In this case, with order ID, it doesn't make sense. Typically, you want to take the order ID from the incoming payload, and therefore you would use GMS path to do that. And you can apply that rule either on the data before the activity has been executed or after the activity has been executed, and this will be applied to it. And if you say there are any errors, I just filter by errors and I see all the ones which were failing, and you see exactly where the error has occurred, and we have the events here. I can click on the event, and in the stack trace, I should be able to see what happens to this. This is actually the exact error message has been thrown by Mule, and the issue here is just this path doesn't exist. Actually, we're looking to read a file which doesn't exist. Okay, so having said that, we can configure, as I mentioned, we can configure attributes, but I can also configure pre-existing properties like the correlation ID. This is the most useful one, correlation ID, which means if you have APIs invoking each other, you are interested to see a chain of those API calls because you want to follow one message across different applications, even across different domains. This is achieved automatically in nJAMS. This icon here indicates these two calls correlate together. As long as the flows invoke each other using HTTP, HTTPS, or messaging, nJAMS will automatically correlate the chains. You don't need to do anything. You have an API, call another one, a flow, call another one. nJAMS will correlate the two automatically for you. You don't need to set up anything in your code, in your implementation. The nJAMS is monitoring the first execution. This is this one, and because it monitors this execution, it will automatically set this correlation ID. The Mule runtime generates correlation IDs. It will use it, and it will inject it in the header of the call to the other flow. And on the other side, nJAMS will automatically take the correlation ID and label this execution with the same correlation ID, and then both of them will correlate. So in addition to that, we can we see the execution times of every single flow, how long it took to execute, and within a flow, we could even see how long it took every activity to execute. By clicking on this one, let me just make it a bit bigger so you see it. So you see the execution times of every single activity is displayed. But not only that, you see also the statistics of every single activity across time. So if you check the activity statistics, you see exactly how this activity has been executed across time. If there are any performance issues, you can examine one single execution, but you can also have a look at how this went for the last hour or the past 6 hours or so, if it's available. As you remember, I have enabled tracing for this activity a while ago. Now you see once this process executes, now it's starting to collect payload data. This is the tracing that I have collected. If you click on the activity, now it enables the input and the output, and in the input, you just see the payload. This is actually, in this case, that was the payload. It was just one list of airlines, and that's it. There were no attributes, there were no variables in the flow at that point of time. And after the call, this is what happened. Still, nothing has changed. So this is exactly what you typically do with tracing. you will see exactly what was in the engine before that activity has executed and what has happened with the data after that activity has executed. So there are plenty of other features, technical features here and there. I would encourage you to check all of those when you do the evaluation yourself. Just to mention a few more, and then I will skip this section. There are objects, so you can label an execution of a flow. This is like a tag. You can tag your flows with object names. Like let's say this object is dealing with orders. This flow is dealing with orders. Then you would click on the first activity or any activity in the flow, and you can go here and label it and say, I would like this flow to be labeled with business object, and the value is always order or invoice. And this allows you to group your flows based on business objects or based on services. This is very useful because you can then start using the objects or the services as your selection criteria for search. If you are looking for orders only, just click on the orders and they will appear automatically. You just need to configure them and they will appear automatically. The beauty of all of these features is you configure all of this in nJAMS without having the need to change anything in your code. You don't have the need to stop or start anything. Start the application or even your runtime. You just do this on the fly. nJAMS automatically communicates with all your engines, no matter whether they run in cloud or on-prem, or you have a combination of all of them. You don't care about that infrastructure layer. Once you enter nJAMS, you just see your flows and you can start to interact with them. Okay, nJAMS takes care of deleting the data automatically. So there is a data retention configuration available. Out of the box, we keep the data for 7 days. And then you can actually override these values if you like. You can override them for any flow of your choice. You may, for example, say this flow, I need to keep the data for 4 weeks. And for another one, you may need data to be stored for 2 or 3 months. Maybe for others, just 1 or 2 days. This is how you can influence the size of your data store, saying which data is more relevant than others, and you can be very granular in doing that. nJAMS automatically deletes the old data from your system, so you don't need to take care of anything. This is automatically done. There are some more features available here, like compressed successful transactions, which means if a transaction is successful, is running without any errors, nJAMS can drop some data, like the transitions, the green lines, but keep the rest for you, just to save some more space. You can exclude flows from monitoring. If you don't want flows to be monitored, you can just go and exclude them. Edit, exclude it, and save it. Then nJAMS will not monitor this flow anymore. And as you see, you can do this on the fly, and you don't need to touch your environment. So everything I am doing in the UI, as you see now, I'm clicking. This all can be done programmatically using REST codes. So the nJAMS server provides a REST API, so you can invoke those REST APIs. They are available in the administration tab. So if I go there, there is a Swagger UI available, which shows you the APIs as available, and you can authenticate yourself and then invoke any call of your choice. So everything, as I said, everything we do in this UI, because this UI goes through the same API, and this is the API that you can also invoke. You can configure all the configurations you've been doing here. You can do via the UI. You can create users. You can create rules, upload rules, and so on and so forth. nJAMS has a reporting section. Reports, there are default reports available in the tool. There are also some reports available as sample reports that you can import from your installation. The default report is created around these three KPIs: the availability, the response time, and the throughput. But as I said, we are collecting all the data of the integration platform, and any data available in our data store can be used to create a report of your choice. It can be technical information about the flows. It can be information about the business data itself, because we are also collecting the payloads, and you can configure attributes, and therefore you can create any report of your choice. Creating a report can be done like this. You just say, this is my report, and you grant access to certain groups to this report. And then once the report is available, because I have developer rights, I can start taking one of those charts available, and there is a huge library available in nJAMS, which is the high charts library that you can use, and then you execute your query. Actually, this is where you build your query against the data store, which is Elasticsearch, and you select one of the available document types that we have in Elastic. For example, you can check the statistics index, or the flow index, or the log messages, the raw data, and so on and so forth. And you execute your query. You can apply privileges of the user viewing the report, which means this report will be limited to only data and flows the user is supposed to see. And in the JavaScript, you can tweak the results and let them look like you want them to be according to your chart that you have selected. There is alerting available in the tool. You can create rules for alerting. Let's say set 1, and I can create a rule based on certain conditions. I can also throttle the rules. Throttling means I don't want the system to send me an alert for every single error. For example, I just want to get one alert per hour for an error type. And I can base my condition on either an activity inside the flow, an attribute, or a flow itself. Flow or a process has the following criteria or fields that I can use. I can, for example, pick the status and say if the status is equals error, then the condition I want to send an email, use HTTP, HTTPS, use JMS, or just send a notification to the user group of users that there is an issue. You can use, for example, HTTPS to invoke a service outside to connect this with another alerting system if you like. That's all possible. And you can have multiple conditions combined together, like, and the process name contains a word like order. If there is an error with order processes, then send me an alert. There is also a feature called on missing events. If you have any flows that are supposed to run once a day or once every hour or so, you could also check whether they were running or not. If they do not execute, then you get a missing event. So nJAMS will automatically detect that this process did not execute and will send you also an alert based on that, based on the conditions that you set. For example, I expect orders to be executed once an hour. This is typically very useful for batch processes if you want to monitor whether batch processes are executed or not. And then finally, we can have a look at Argos. Argos is a component inside nJAMS that we use to monitor the underlying infrastructure. So the underlying infrastructure means we monitor the machine, we monitor the Mule applications, and we monitor actually the network and any databases. This is about the infrastructure monitoring piece, but we're not just monitoring the infrastructure. We're actually trying to bridge the gap between monitoring the flows, the APIs you are running on Mule with the underlying infrastructure. So therefore, you see, this is about a machine that we monitor. That machine, this is a Linux machine with this ID. nJAMS, if I edit this diagram, let me just edit it. you can build as many diagrams as you want, as many dashboards as you want. By double-clicking on it, it gives you a configuration, and then you can select any component of your choice. All the components discovered by nJAMS are displayed here. You see all the flows, the APIs, as well as the machines running those APIs. If you have multiple Mule runtimes, they will all appear here. And you'll be able to configure that. During the configuration, you can also create alerting rules. If I go to rules, I can create some rules to monitor some stuff and assign those rules, like CPU usage, for example, CPU usage, Mule runtime. I just want to check the CPU usage of the Mule runtime and edit this rule. And this rule says if process that's CPU usage greater than 10, if you are going beyond 10% of CPU, then create an alert, a warning alert. This is not an error alert, a warning alert with this message. CPU is going at this, else clear alert. You can send emails out of this. You can send JMS out of JMS messages out of this rule. This is something. Actually, this has already been assigned to the Mule app. So let's go back to our diagram. This is the Linux machine. This is the Mule runtime, and this is the one application running on this Mule runtime. Because we can have multiple applications hosted on the same Mule runtime. So the Mule application itself is having that rule associated with it. So if process status CPU usage greater than 10, you see this is now associated, actually assigned to this component. Because you create rules, as many rules as you want for different aspects, and then you can assign those rules to certain components. This is how it goes. Now, I would like to ask Chrono to maybe simulate a situation that we are running out of CPU. We are exceeding 10% of CPU, and then we will see what happens. Those arrows, Chrono, please go ahead and do that. Those arrows indicate there is a dependency, which means now we see this application is giving us an alert. This alert has the information. So as you see, and now it's cleared because the CPU went down. So it's automatically cleared. Those arrows indicate there is a dependency, which means if this machine is having an issue, then that issue will be propagated to the Mule runtime, and the Mule runtime will propagate the issue to all applications that we monitor on that Mule runtime, that will run on that Mule runtime. And this is the gap that we bridge, because sometimes your Mule application may be slow, maybe having some issues, or may not. The Mule application may be green, but the underlying infrastructure is suffering. And what you will see because of this dependency, if the infrastructure is having an issue, if you are dependent on that machine or on a database or on a network drive or something like that, you could design it here and make this dependency visible to you. If something happens here, you see it and you get an alert. And you can build multiple dashboards, and each of those dashboards can have one or more pages inside, and you get the alert in here, and you can jump from any alert up to the dashboards and see exactly what's going on. And finally, we have the administration tab. The administration tab is where you configure your complete nJAMS platform. This is where you configure Argos. The indexer is the configuration with Elasticsearch. Depending on how much data you want to save, you can set up an Elastic cluster. Everything we need in nJAMS is shipped with the software, so you don't need to install it separately. nJAMS will have everything inside. It has Elastic, it has messaging, it has Wildfly as web application server, which hosts this application that we see now, and so on. The message processing is where you see how much monitoring data is coming to nJAMS, how many has been processed. You can have multiple data providers available. nJAMS is designed to monitor multiple domains, multiple technologies at the same time, and therefore you can set up multiple data providers to get data from different domains. Users and roles, you can synchronize them with LDAP, and you create one or more users. You can have a combination of users coming from LDAP and locally created users in nJAMS, and then you have roles, and you can assign roles to users based on privileges. So these are the object privileges available. You have the default privileges like read, write, manage, and then you have the replay domain objects. You can replay data. You can enable or disable replay, or replay the data, or you could even have the privilege to change the data before you execute a replay. And this is all audited by nJAMS. If you do replay, nJAMS will be able to tell you who did execute the replay, what was the original message, what was the replayed message, what is the difference between the two.